This video will be for people that are buying New Holland balers that need to know your daily, weekly, monthly, or every cutting maintenance as far as grease zerks and that kind of stuff. This is a 340 plus big baler that we're on, but it basically is the same on all of them. They might have just moved the grease zerk around, but we'll start at the front of the baler up here. The drive line, I usually grease every 24 hours of maintenance. I don't like to over grease the drive line just because you don't want to blow the seals out on your U-joints and whatnot. This constant velocity joint takes probably a half a tube of grease every time you grease it. Everything else on the U-joints, you basically just grease it until it starts to crackle. You don't want to blow the seals out on it. Your center carrier bearing is every 8 hours, or every day you bail with it, you better grease that. And then you've got another drive line zerk up here. And then you'll go move to the flywheel, which is, I usually do this, I would call it every cutting. So for us, or every 100 hours for us, we do it every cutting. They've got a zerk on the front of the flywheel and on the rear of the flywheel, and you kind of roll it around to where you can see it. And then what you'll want to do for the rest of the grease zerks and maintenance is you will roll the baler over and line all the timing marks up. And how you do that is you roll your plunger back, there you go. You'll roll your plunger back until your timing mark is lined up, and that is extremely crucial for one zerk. So always line your timing marks up when you're greasing, and that is for this zerk right here. You'll go in the back. This is the most crucial grease zerk on a New Holland baler because everyone forgets to grease it and it knocks those bushings out. So on the previous models, other than a 340 plus, so everything basically 340 standard and back, these clutch dog arms, the zerks were in the front, and that goes for the one up on the Knotters as well. But on the 340 pluses, they moved it to the outside. So obviously you'll grease that one and grease that one every 8 hours. Your drive line probably every 2 days. It says every 50 hours, but doesn't hurt it to grease it every 2 days. On the 340 pluses and up, they put greasable zerks on your crop holding fingers. The 340 standards and back did not have greasable crop holding fingers. So basically you'll want to make sure your auto luber is lubing as you're doing your greasing, and it doesn't hurt, again, once a cutting, to hit all the grease zerks on your blocks to make sure that you are getting grease at all your auto lubed fittings as well. That's not an everyday deal. Like I said, if you're watching, you're making sure everything's greasing, you should only have to do that probably once every cutting. Just put a couple pumps in on every one of those. So that basically gets us all the zerks on this side of the lower baler. Then you have, if you crawl under the baler, on a tandem axle baler, you've got zerks on your rear axle and your pivot pin for your leaf springs. So I think there's, there's your king pins on both sides, and then you've got your tie rod here. It's got zerks on both sides, and then on your pivot pin. So you want to grease those once a cutting as well. And then we'll go up to the top of the baler. And there's another zerk on your drive line that comes up to your Knotters, is right in that can there. And then the rest of them will be under your Knotter shield. And basically what you've got is, again, you've got your two zerks, but on the older 340s and older on your clutch dog arm, that zerk will be up front up here. So you've got that one, and I grease those every day. And then you've got your two zerks on your grease blocks for your Knotters. That's, again, once a cutting, because that's all on your auto luber. So you don't have to worry about those every day, just once a cutting or so. And that gets everything greased up here. As for auto lube grease, I use New Holland's #2 grease in my auto lubers. You got to be really careful on what grease you get for these auto lubers because some of it will harden up. I don't know if I have. Yep, this is the grease that I run in my auto lubers. It's the Ambra, and it's number 2. That's what I run in the auto lubers and in my grease guns. I've never had an issue plugging them up, and they grease awesome. Okay, we'll move around to the other side of this baler. And again, 340 plus balers and above have the Zerks on the crop holding fingers, but all the other balers, as well as these, have the Zerks behind this can. You've got a Zerk on your bearing here, and then there's 2 Zerks on this clutch, and you'll just roll that clutch around until you can get to them. You got one on the splines here, and then another one on the face of the clutch here for if it slips, it's going to lube everything there. From there, there's a couple other Zerks that aren't very important, but they are there. I usually do them once a season, and they are these Zerks that come off the gearbox that go on these shafts, basically just to keep the splines greased. There's one there and a couple on the other side of that, and those are not very important. Like I said, I do those probably once a year. On these newer balers, some of them do have the greasable ball joint here, some of them don't, but if your baler has that greasable ball joint for your needle protection link, it will have that as well. And I think that basically ties up all the Zerks for a New Holland baler. Grease it, maintain it, blow it off. These balers will last you forever. So I'm going to go through this IntelliView 4, and it's just basically the same as the IntelliView 3 on basics of what you need to know when you're operating a New Holland baler. For some of these guys that are getting into the New Holland balers, they have these questions. So basically what you'll have is you've got 2 baler screens here, and basically what that is number 1 is this screen, and if you want to set it up for something different or, you know, change things around on this, you can go to number 2. For instance, say if you're baling hay with the Harvest Tech like I am, and you want to watch all your Harvest Tech stuff, you can put your Harvest Tech moisture meter and your application rate and everything here. And then if you're baling dry hay where you're not needing to run it and you want to watch something else, you can set these icons up for something else. So basically what you'll do is you've got your auto. When your baler's off, you've got this baler icon. When you turn the PTO on, it'll bring up your capacity and load screen. So in here, when you hit that number 1 baler or number 2 baler, whatever you're in, it'll come into your auto manual. So that changes it from manual to auto. I always run mine in auto. There is certain situations where you may have to run it in manual. We'll get into those on a later date. Your plus and minus is basically just to turn your density up and down. These 2 icons, you've got work lights icons and your standard lights icons. So if your baler's equipped with all the lights, there's how you turn them on and off. You turn them on and off there. Then we'll go back in here. So then, like on your bales, if you want to clear your bale count, this is a good time to do this. Mine still has bales on it from when we finished last year. You just hit this one here, which is this M. Hold on, we'll go back. So this M, you'll hit that icon, you'll hit it again, it'll bring you into this. You tap that, it's going to tell you exactly what was going on, and you can just hit X, and that'll open a new file. When you go back, you'll have no bales. Now, what you'll do there, if you want to go in and say, okay, the last time I baled, it saves it, and you can either clear them or you can keep them. It'll save it every time you clear it. So, okay, that day we baled 103 bales. It tells you your moisture, tells you your average weight. So then the day before we baled 37 bales, tells you your average weight. If you have a bale scale. And if you want to get rid of those, all you got to do is hit the X there, hit the X there, hit the X there, and you're cleared and ready to go. Okay, moving down, we will go into here. This is for your Harvest Tech moisture setup. That's how I have mine set up, to where it'll read low and high, 0% and 70%. That way it will read lower than or higher than. It won't bring up those stupid icons that tell you that you're not reading enough or something. Then if we go down to here, this is your service. Every 10 hours, this top one will beep at you. All you have to do is, when it starts beeping at 10 hours, you'll go in, it'll say service required. You go into that screen, you hit check. Yeah, you greased it, right on. And then you can clear all these as well if you've done all your other services. Like we just got done with our winter maintenance, so I can clear every one of those. Your 2500 bales will go off at 2500 bale service, so it'll start beeping there. Okay, and then you'll go down onto your next one down here, and this is how you turn your oiler up or down. So you can go in here and you can turn it to normal, high, test, any of that. That's just for your chain oiler. And then if you go into the next icon down, which is your baler settings, you've got, this is where it brings you into your work lights if they're installed, whatnot, your nodder fans. So you can have these always off or 600 RPM. Obviously you want it on 600 RPM. Accessory 1 is for your auto luber, and that one, as of right now, I have it always on, but I do that for testing purposes. And so once we start baling, we'll turn it to 600 RPM, or you can do it to 600 RPM in feeding. I like 600 RPM, so if you're in light hay or something, it's still gonna grease, where 600 RPM, it needs to be stuffing, telling it that you're feeding. But if your baler's just sitting there idling or something, for whatever reason, it will continue to grease. So I kind of like the 600 RPM. So that's how you set that up. And then accessory 2 and accessory 3 you don't have to worry about, because there's nothing on those on a factory baler anyways. This basically, the next icon down just tells you what software and whatnot you have in there. This is your error overview, your errors from times before, and that was like what happened in the past. But this one's just your active errors, there is none. And this is how the lower 2 icons, when you go into your L1 and L2, that tells you basically when you go back up to the top here, where I was telling you you have number 1 and 2 bale screens. That's how you set those icons up, is your L1 and L2. You can set what you want on each of those screens. So pretty simple there. To go farther in, if you need to do something different and you need to adjust a sensor, you would go into inputs and you'll tap on that up there. So, and you can go in and adjust any of your sensors. That's how you adjust them, is you just tap on them, whatever sensor you're going to do, and that will bring you into where you can set your sensor and set it to the correct voltage and whatnot. So, and then this one down here is just your main relay. That obviously needs to be on, but you never have to really mess with that one. But that one there, if you need to go in and set any sensors, that is how you would do it. So that's basically everything that you would need to know on these balers, on how to run these balers. It's pretty simple.